The sea tore open with violence, and silence shattered as nature struck without warning. A fin sliced the waves like a blade, forcing panic into every heartbeat. The narrator whispered, "The law of survival does not wait, it devours." James said, "God help us, it's coming fast." Daniel cried out, "I can't see where it is." The waves seemed alive, shifting beneath them, mocking their fragile wooden boat. The ocean roared with the cruelty of fate, merciless and final. A gull shrieked overhead, its cry drowned by chaos. Water slapped the sides of the boat as if warning them to abandon hope. Then came the silence, sharp and deadly, before the unseen predator surged closer. The world paused on a knife edge. In that breathless moment, life itself hung in question. The shark's fin gleamed black against silver foam, cutting through the shallow surf like a curse. Nothing would ever be the same again. The sea groaned like a beast, every wave a threat. The narrator whispered, "Survival is never granted, it is stolen." James said, "Hold on, Daniel, don't move." The boy trembled, biting his lip as the fin circled unseen. Silence pressed against them, broken by the creak of soaked wood. Daniel said, "I can hear it under us." His voice cracked, barely human in its terror. The gulls vanished, fleeing inland, leaving only the sound of rushing water. The air tasted of salt and fear, heavy, suffocating. James clenched his jaw, eyes searching the water desperately. He muttered, "It's testing us, waiting for the moment." The boat shifted violently, nearly throwing them over. Every heartbeat was louder than the ocean. The water beneath them pulsed with hidden force. The narrator said, "The predator writes its law with hunger, and the sea obeys." James steadied himself, voice low, "It wants fear before flesh." Daniel said, "Why us?" His words dissolved into the spray. The boat creaked, bow dipping with every surge. Shadows twisted below, forming illusions of jaws in the deep. The fin appeared again, closer this time, splitting water with savage intent. James raised the oar like a weapon, though he knew it was useless. His eyes hardened, fear mixing with grim defiance. The waves heaved again, and silence fell before the next strike. The boat rocked violently as the unseen bulk surged beneath. The narrator whispered, "The sea spares no innocence." Daniel shouted, "It's under us." His cry cracked as the hull groaned like breaking bone. James planted his feet, arms trembling as he steadied Daniel. Water erupted in sprays, droplets cutting cold into their faces. The gulls were gone, but echoes of their cries lingered like ghosts. James said, "We survive by standing, not by surrender." His voice broke into a snarl, part command, part prayer. The ocean hissed with cruel rhythm, waiting for blood. The world shrank to boat, waves, and predator. Dark water curled upward, ready to strike. The narrator declared, "Nature's judgment is swift and merciless." James muttered, "If it takes me, you run inland, Daniel." The boy's lips quivered, whispering, "I won't leave you." The boat tilted so sharply, the horizon vanished. Spray blinded them, and beneath the surface, massive shadows swirled. James gritted his teeth, clutching the oar like a lifeline. The silence of the sea was broken by a low thrum, a vibration that rattled through the wood. Then the fin appeared again, circling, slower this time, savoring the terror it fed upon. Death was patient, inevitable. The storm eased, but the silence that followed was heavier than thunder. The narrator said, "Every fragile bond is tested by the sea." James steadied his son, brushing salt from his face. He whispered, "You stay alive because I need you to." Daniel's breath shook, and his eyes clung to his father's for strength. Above them, gray skies stretched endlessly, a canvas of despair. The waves slowed, yet every ripple carried menace. Daniel said, "It's still there waiting." James pulled him close, arms tense, as if defiance alone could shield them. The ocean was vast and different, but in that moment, survival rested not in strength, but in love. The narrator said, Fragility becomes the anchor when all else collapses. Daniel whispered, "Why is it chasing us?" James clenched his jaw, answering, "Because we are small, and small things are easy to break." His words cut through the air, sharp as salt. The boat drifted, wood groaning with every swell, a fragile cradle on an endless abyss. Daniel's eyes filled with tears, but his voice carried a spark of stubbornness. "I'm not letting it take us." James looked at him then, not as a child, but as his equal in fear. The sea surrounded them, merciless, but their bond glowed like a single flame in the dark. The boat creaked as if it too feared the depths. The narrator said, "Empathy is carved by weakness, and weakness is the truth of survival." James steadied his son, forcing calm into his shaking hands. Daniel whispered, "I hear it under us again." James muttered, "Then it hears us too." His eyes scanned the water, every ripple a threat, every shadow a lie. Fear trembled in Daniel's voice, but he sat upright, refusing to fold. The gulls had gone, leaving only the sea's vast emptiness. The silence was cruel, but within it, the fragile bond between father and son became their only shield. The narrator said, "Hope clings most fiercely to those who should not survive." Daniel shivered, whispering, "I'm scared." James wrapped an arm around him, muttering, "Fear is proof we're alive." Their boat drifted like driftwood, helpless yet carried by will alone. Water lapped quietly, concealing its lurking predator. A shadow slid beneath the surface, vanishing before either could react. James stiffened, gripping the oar tighter. His eyes flicked toward Daniel, whose trembling hand sought his father's. The silence grew heavy, pressing down like the weight of the sea itself. In that stillness, survival meant refusing despair. The narrator said, "When danger closes in, it is love that sharpens the edge of fear." Daniel looked into his father's face and whispered, "You won't let it take me, will you?" James' voice broke, "Not while I breathe." The boat shifted again, warning of the predator's return. Spray touched their cheeks, cold and merciless. James' arms tightened around his son, a shield carved by desperation. Daniel pressed his face against his father's chest, trembling but still holding on. The sea swallowed sound, leaving only their beating hearts. In the grip of terror, they were bound tighter than blood. The narrator said, "Conflict grows when the sea sharpens its teeth." Waves rose higher, battering the fragile boat with cruel rhythm. James shouted, "Keep your head down, Daniel." The boy clung tighter, his eyes darting to every ripple. The fin cut closer again, tracing circles with deliberate hunger. Wood creaked, as if begging to break. Daniel gasped, "It's playing with us." The ocean churned, alive with menace, every shadow twisting into jaws. James tightened his grip on the oar, though he knew it was nothing against the depths. The predator's patience was fading, and with it, their fragile hope. The narrator said, "Every heartbeat becomes thunder when death draws near." A wave slammed the hull, sending water crashing inside. Daniel cried out, "It's under us again!" James steadied him, muttering, "Don't give it what it wants, fear." The boat tilted violently, wood screaming under strain. The fin vanished, only to reappear farther away, circling like a ghost. Spray lashed across their faces, stinging like knives. Daniel's chest heaved, his eyes wide with panic. The predator's rhythm was shifting, no longer testing but preparing. The ocean carried them in its grip, merciless, tightening like a noose. The narrator said, "Conflict escalates until fear becomes flesh." A shadow surged beneath the surface, rocking the boat hard. James roared, "Hold tight." Daniel screamed as water spilled across their legs. The fin cut so close it scraped foam against the hull. The boat shuddered, nails groaning loose. Daniel whispered, "It wants to break us apart." James swung the oar down, striking water in rage, a hollow act against the abyss. The predator circled back, its speed growing, the sea boiling in its wake. Every ripple was violence, every second closer to collapse. The ocean demanded surrender. The narrator said, conflict strips away mercy until only raw instinct remains. Another crash of water lifted the boat, threatening to flip it. James wrapped one arm around Daniel, holding him steady. The boy shouted, "We can't win!" James snarled, "We fight until the end." The predator's fin sliced past again, closer than ever, its shadow dark and enormous. Spray exploded over them, soaking their trembling bodies. Fear became exhaustion. Exhaustion became despair. The sea roared louder, drowning out their cries. The battle was no longer of strength, but of endurance, a test neither was certain to survive. The narrator said, at the breaking point, despair tastes like salt. The boat groaned, seams splitting under relentless waves. James shouted, "Stay with me!" Daniel sobbed, "I can't, it's too much." The fin vanished again, but the silence it left was heavier than noise. Spray lashed at their faces, stinging eyes raw. James' grip on the oar faltered, exhaustion bending his shoulders. Daniel clung to him, trembling, lips whispering prayers swallowed by the sea. The predator was near, closer than before, its hunger thick in the water. The storm raged, and survival teetered on the knife's edge of despair. The narrator said, "What we fear as a monster may itself be fighting for survival." Beneath the waves, the fin cut closer, but hesitation lingered in its path. James muttered, "It's circling again, but slower this time." Daniel whispered, "Why hasn't it struck?" The ocean groaned as if hiding an unspoken truth. A flicker of shadow revealed scars carved across the predator's body. The hunter was wounded, desperate, not invincible. James clenched his jaw, realization tightening his grip. He murmured, "It's starving. We're not its choice, we're its chance." The predator and prey mirrored each other, both broken, both clinging to life. The narrator said, "Every enemy hides its own struggle." The shark circled slowly, movement strained, blood trailing faintly into the water. Daniel whispered, "It's hurt. It's bleeding." James steadied his breath, muttering, "It's desperate like us." The boat creaked as if bearing witness to their fragile connection. For a moment, fear shifted into something colder, pity twisted with dread. The predator was no longer endless strength, but fragile hunger incarnate. James said, "It doesn't hunt for malice, it hunts because it must." The truth cut deeper than any bite. Survival bound them all in the same cage. The narrator said, "The sea betrays hunter and hunted alike." A sudden shift in the current tilted the boat. James grabbed Daniel, holding him steady. Shadows moved beneath, not one, but many. Daniel gasped, "There's more than one." James' voice broke low. "It's not the only predator here." The wounded shark was being trailed, stalked by others of its kind. The truth struck like lightning. Their terror was shared with the very creature they feared. The circle of survival was merciless. The hunted was also the hunted. Daniel whispered, "It's fighting them, not us." The sea revealed its cruel balance. The narrator said, "Truth tears the veil of fear and leaves only awe." The scarred shark surged, forcing weaker rivals back with desperate lunges. Water boiled with power, thrashing in chaos. James tightened his grip on Daniel, muttering, "It's fighting for its life same as us." Daniel's voice cracked. "It's not the villain, is it?" Silence answered him, heavy as the sea itself. They watched predator turn victim, its survival no more certain than their own. The boat swayed violently, caught in the vortex of battle. Fear gave way to revelation. Nature's law spared no one. The narrator said, "What we condemn as shadow may mirror our own struggle." The shark, battered and bleeding, broke the surface beside their boat, eyes burning with primal will. James whispered, "It won't last long." Daniel muttered, "It's just trying to live." The moment bound them to the predator in grim kinship. Waves hissed, swallowing blood, painting the water red. Rivals closed in, relentless, circling for the kill. The scarred shark lunged once more, defiant against fate. James and Daniel watched in silence, hearts caught between fear and sorrow. For the first time, predator and prey shared the same face. The narrator said, "Climax is not survival's triumph, but its cost." The scarred shark surged upward, slamming the boat in a storm of foam. James shouted, "Hold on, Daniel." The boys screamed as wood splintered beneath them. Rivals closed in, snapping jaws tearing water apart. The boat lurched violently, a coffin adrift on chaos. Daniel clung tighter, nails digging into his father's arm. James swung the oar wildly, striking water with defiance. The sea erupted, no longer hiding its cruelty. Blood and salt filled the air, choking their breaths. The predator's final stand dragged them all into the eye of survival's storm. The narrator said, "Every breath at the edge of death becomes sacred." James roared, "Stay down!" as another fin sliced past the boat. Daniel ducked low, trembling, yet refusing to let go of his father's arm. The scarred shark thrashed against its rivals, jaws clashing with bone-rattling force. Waves heaved, towering like walls, smashing against the wooden hull. Spray blinded them, cold as ice, sharp as knives. James swung again, striking water as shadows darted beneath. Daniel gasped, "It's fighting them, not us." The realization seared through their terror, but the sea had no mercy. Every heartbeat thundered as if it were the last. The narrator said, "Climax is born in the collision of desperation." Rivals tore at the wounded shark, but it fought back, blood staining the waves crimson. James steadied Daniel as the boat pitched, nearly overturning. Daniel cried out, "It's going under us." The hull groaned like breaking bone as shadows swarmed beneath. James shouted, "Hold fast, no matter what." His eyes burned with fury, daring the sea to take him. Daniel clung tighter, his face pressed against his father's chest. The boat creaked, split by the violence raging below. Predator and prey blurred into one truth. Everything was fighting for life. The narrator said, "Survival is teeth against teeth, will against will." The scarred shark breached, colliding with its rival in a frenzy. Spray drenched the boat, striking like hail. James raised the oar high, screaming, "Stay back!" Daniel covered his ears, eyes squeezed shut against the roar. The sharks clashed inches away, waves shaking the boat to its core. Blood spattered across the water's surface, a crimson veil. James' grip trembled, but his stance never faltered. Daniel whimpered, "Make it stop." His plea was swallowed by chaos. Above them, the sky tore open with thunder, sealing the storm's merciless verdict. The narrator said, "At the peak, survival is not triumph, it is sacrifice." The scarred shark lunged one final time, dragging its rival downward in a bloody vortex. Waves crashed like mountains, hurling the boat sideways. James roared, "Hold on!" as wood screamed under strain. Daniel clung with every shred of strength, teeth chattering. The sea consumed the battle, churning red and black. For a breath, silence followed, heavy and absolute. James collapsed to his knees, clutching Daniel close. Their bodies shook, their breaths ragged. The predator was gone, swallowed by the abyss, but its struggle remained etched in them forever. The narrator said, "When the storm breaks, the sea leaves only silence." The waves calmed, though the water was stained red, carrying fragments of violence. James whispered, "It's over. For now." Daniel clung to him, his trembling steadying against the warmth of his father's chest. The gulls slowly returned, circling high above, their cries sharp against the quiet. The boat rocked gently, though cracks in the wood warned of fragility. Daniel muttered, "It fought like us." James nodded, his face hardened by grief and awe. The predator was gone, but its struggle lingered, etched deep into the silence. The narrator said, "Resolution is neither victory nor mercy, only truth." James touched the cracked side of the boat, whispering, "This won't hold much longer." Daniel lifted his head, eyes hollow yet alive, and said, "We're still here." The sea stretched endless, cruel in its calm. No fin cut the waves, but the memory of their shapes haunted every ripple. The boat swayed, a fragile coffin adrift on fate. James stared into the horizon, his voice low. Survival costs more than life. It takes what you never get back. The silence carried their exhaustion, wrapping them like a shroud. The narrator said, "The sea is not cruel, it is absolute." Daniel whispered, "Will it come back?" His voice shook with exhaustion. James shook his head slowly, answering, "No." It gave everything it had. For a moment, compassion replaced fear. They sat still, bound in silence, the ocean vast around them. Shadows of clouds drifted across the surface like fading scars. James gripped Daniel's hand tightly, refusing to let go. The boy closed his eyes, resting against him. The predator was gone, but its sacrifice lingered like an echo of inevitability. Nothing in nature is spared its due. The narrator said, "Resolution binds predator and prey as one." James stared at the horizon, his voice low. "It died fighting, not fleeing." Daniel murmured, "Like us then." A breeze stirred, carrying salt and silence. The sea rocked their battered boat gently, lulling it like a cradle, as if mocking the violence that came before. Gulls skimmed low, their wings brushing the surface, reclaiming the quiet. James closed his eyes briefly, letting exhaustion sink in, though his arms never loosened around his son. Resolution was not peace, but a truth they could not escape. Survival demands sacrifice. The narrator said, "In the end, silence is the only witness that remains." Daniel whispered, "I'm still scared." James held him tighter, muttering, "Fear means you're still alive." The sea glistened faintly as morning light broke through clouds, streaking gold across gray. For the first time, warmth touched their skin, fragile and fleeting. The boy's breathing slowed, his trembling fading into calm. James exhaled, gaze locked on the horizon, where sea and sky merged into infinity. The predator was gone, but its will remained, echoing in every heartbeat. Nature gave no mercy, but it left them breath to endure. The narrator said, "The sea remembers what we cannot forget." Morning light spread across the horizon, but calm could not erase the violence below. James whispered, "We're alive." Somehow. Daniel lifted his head, his eyes empty yet burning with what they had seen. The waves lapped gently now, as if mocking the blood that had stained them. A broken piece of driftwood floated by, silent proof of the predator's fall. Daniel said softly, "It fought until the end." James stared at the water, the weight of survival carved deep into his face. The sea was quiet, but its echo never would be. The narrator said, "The ocean gives nothing without taking more." James dipped his hand into the water, letting droplets fall like fragments of memory. Daniel whispered, "It's still here, isn't it?" James nodded slowly, answering, "Always, even when unseen." The silence pressed heavy, broken only by the faint cry of gulls above. The horizon glowed faintly with the promise of day, yet shadows lingered beneath the surface. Fear had shifted into reverence, a respect born of shared struggle. They had not conquered the sea. They had simply survived long enough to be spared. The echo of loss hung between every breath. The narrator said, "An echo is not sound, but memory refusing to fade." Daniel muttered, "I keep hearing it in the water." James pulled him closer, answering, "That's the sea. It never forgets." The boat drifted in silence, fragile and broken. A fin-shaped shadow rippled beneath for an instant, gone before certainty could take root. Both froze, hearts pounding, neither daring to speak. Fear returned in a whisper, sharp and cold, though the surface remained calm. The ocean revealed nothing more. Daniel buried his face into his father's chest, trembling. The silence stretched, eternal, carrying the ghost of what had passed. The narrator said, "Every survivor carries the weight of those who fell." James exhaled, his voice low, "We will not forget." Daniel whispered, "It's like it gave us its fight." The sea shimmered with dawn's first warmth, yet the memory of blood clung heavy. The boat rocked gently, carrying them toward an unseen shore. Silence stretched, but it no longer threatened. It mourned. James stared forward, his expression solemn yet unbroken. Daniel clutched his arm, holding tighter than before. The ocean's judgment was complete, but its echo remained within them, sharp and eternal. Nothing would ever be the same. The narrator said, "The last strike is silence itself." The sea stretched endless, horizon glowing gold, as night surrendered. James whispered, "We live but not unchanged." Daniel's eyes shimmered, his lips parting to speak, but no words came. He pressed close to his father, their breaths slow, heavy, joined. The boat drifted onward, fragile against eternity. Beneath, the ocean held its secrets, dark and eternal. The gulls soared higher, their cries fading into the wind. The echo of the predator, of blood, of survival, lingered like a scar on the sea. The silence struck hardest, and would never leave.